Welcome, everyone, to the Logistics Old Doghouse podcast. This is episode 5. I'm here with my great co-host, Mr. John Brewer. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good for a Friday, man. Got a nice long weekend coming up. It's gonna be nice.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. I just hope the weather holds up a little bit.
Yeah, it's. I hope it cools off down here. Yesterday was
Yeah,
like a
did you have
hundred.
some bad storms down there like last night?
No, sir. It
Oh,
was. It was 104 here yesterday.
Jesus, unbelievable, unbelievable. Well, you know what? It was a fast week. I can't believe that we're here on a Friday and you got Labor Day on Monday. Have any plans or anything you're doing?
Just doing some stuff around the house, man. Just going to keep it low and quiet.
Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of golfing on Sunday. I have some relatives coming up for a couple days, so it should be fun. Haven't seen them in a while, so I'm looking forward to it.
That sounds like it'd be a good time.
Yeah, yeah. So today we're going to discuss looking into the future and relationships. Um, I put a post out there earlier this morning regarding relationships with carriers and how I would say probably 99% of brokers and service providers who deal with carriers don't consider this when they put things out on the spot market or even when they're doing an RFP. You know what happens when you put out an RFP, you get all these carriers that are sending back their proposals, what lanes that they want, and so forth and so on. And then once the service provider, broker, or even shipper looks at that, they make their decision and they select their carriers, and they'll call up their carriers and saying, "Hey, you know what? We're going to give you these few lanes or whatever." But it goes more than that, because what happens with that, John, is that when you're taking the time out of all these carriers' day, especially their pricing department, pricing manager, who's, let's say you've got 100 lanes that you want pricing or less than that, they're going to put a lot of effort in that to try to win over the opportunity and create more revenue for them. I mean, that's what we're all in the business to do. But the one thing that's left out, do you know what that is?
I don't have a clue, man, but I know you do.
I do. And it has to do with new carriers and incumbent carriers and the things that you do after you receive your proposals and you make your selection. That is a winner letter and a loser letter for your incumbent carrier as well. Hey, John, listen, I just want to let you know that I appreciate all the effort that you and your company put into this proposal. There's a lot of different factors out there. And if you're an incumbent carrier as such, it has nothing to do with your service level, John. You did a fantastic job, but the market, the way that it is, it's all about pricing. And the shipper that I represent, been going back and forth because, you and I both realize, to survive in this market, we all have to make some money. And I understand the shipper's point of view as well, because he's got a lot of downward pressure from the C-level people, save, save, save. But we're talking about relationships here. But unfortunately, it was due to pricing, nothing to do with service, and they chose another carrier. But that doesn't mean our relationship's over, John. We're definitely going to go back out to you in the future and give you some more opportunities to bid on. And I thank you in advance for your understanding. Jeff Dickinson, RGTX Logistics Solution. That goes so far because it tells the carrier not just that you're passionate about that, but you also respect the time that they put in to doing this. That, a lot of the guys out there, the one destroyer of relationships, John, that I know for a fact, because I've talked to a lot of people, I never did this because I had some good mentors and coaches. The carriers you go out to will not put their best foot forward when you don't acknowledge them at all. That you just take it for granted, and it's a big thing. And I know for a fact 99% of the people Nobody even answered my post because I knew that they wouldn't do that because they think it's too much time to write a letter, even if you mail it or email it, and a follow-up call would suffice as well, multiple ways of doing it. And it doesn't take that much time to do it. You can have a template built. I mean, I could show you a couple templates that I've had and used, and it just says enter carrier name, enter your carrier rep's name, make it personalized.
Right.
If you have that kind of relationship with them. So what are your thoughts about that?
I think that's a great idea. While you were speaking, I was thinking about people who interview for jobs. And the one thing, whenever I would interview, I would always send handwritten thank you notes to the interviewers after the meeting, and whether I got the position or not. That's that little thing of just responding and saying, "Hey, man, I appreciate your time. Look forward to having a conversation with you." Very similar to what you're speaking of. It's those little details that, as we got into this world and the world keeps just spinning faster and faster, we overlook these things.
Yeah,
and it can make a world of difference. I mean, if on the interview side, if it's between neck and neck between you and somebody else, who knows? That thank you note may push you over the edge and you get the job, because they're thinking, hey, he's definitely interested. He's interested in the job, and he's also respecting my time and my energy and my effort, and wanted to say thank you. So
yeah.
Same way with the carriers. To your point, I mean, 100 lane bid. I mean, that's going to take some time and some heavy duty number crunching. And it's probably not the only RFP in their bin right now. They're probably doing 3 or 4 at a time. So yeah, I mean, you put in all that time, energy, and effort, and you don't. All you hear is crickets, and that's it. It's a little disappointing. I mean, it's you don't want to be rejected, but at the same time, you don't want to be ghosted either. So
two things are going to happen from that, and I've had some friends that were the pricing managers for some very large carriers, and I've had cordial conversations with them to feel them out, because I'm not in that position, and that's why I ask questions, because my intuitive nature wants to know what they go through and everything. There's two things that will happen when you send a thank you note, or any kind of note acknowledging the fact that they put time in. One, if you don't say anything, they're not going to put their best foot forward to give you the best rates, because they know that they're not going to get a response. They never do from you, right?
Right.
Secondly, to your point, you got a lot of RFPs that are on top of the pricing manager's desk. Could be several of them, right? You don't want to be you don't want to be on the bottom of that.
No, you don't.
What they appreciate when you send those things, they're going to obviously get an email, and they're going to look at them, and they're going to go, "Oh, John, I remember the last time, man. He was a nice guy. He appreciated everything we do. I'm going to look at this first, because I know they know you respect what they do." Absolutely. And that's how you go from the bottom to the top on that, and that's how you can turn around your RFP. Requirements in a timely manner, because a lot of shippers out there, I need it back by, right? You hear it all the time when you go outward, or you're like, for you as a shipper, I'm sure that, it takes time to go and do that. So you'll give them 3 weeks maybe to turn it around, depending upon how sizable the opportunity is, right? Because they have to really dig into it and look at their numbers and their ORs, their operating ratios, and how profitable it's going to be, et cetera. So the thing is that you have to appreciate that. It will help you out so much, even on a spot market. It's like, Jesus, man, you know what? I'm freaking sending out 100 freaking spot quotes every single day. I don't have time for this bullshit. Let me tell you something. If you do that, just a quick follow-up, and let the carriers who responded know that you're very appreciative, they're going to remember that.
Absolutely.
they will definitely remember that. It's putting a feather in your cap. It doesn't take you long to do that. It's very important that whoever's out there, that let's just put it, all brokers out there who use the spot market, not necessarily dedicated. You start doing this, you're going to see better results. You will definitely see better results.
In my talks with other people in the industry, I'll come across, I always tell people you got to separate yourself from the pack. Everybody's pretty much doing the same thing, delivering stuff from point A to point B. Your customer service may be a little better, your tech may be a little better, but this right here, this writing these handwritten notes, that's going to separate you from the pack.
Right.
And people are going to stand up and take notice of that, because obviously not everybody's doing that. It's not flooded in the market, because most people don't even think about it. And it's such, to your point, it's such a simple thing to do, and it doesn't take a lot of time, but the benefit is immense. I mean, the ROI on this one act is just through the roof. People are going to remember your name. People are going to remember what you did. The old saying goes, if you tell an employee, if you praise an employee for doing a good job, they're going to continue, because they want to keep doing that, getting that praise. So this is exactly right in line with that. If you're thanking people for their time and you're respecting their time, that's going to go a long way, because let's face it, we don't have a lot of time. Our time is very stretched.
Oh yeah.
And if you come in and you show that level of respect, then somebody's going to make time for you, because you obviously, you make time for what's important. You make excuses for what is not.
So they're going to return that too, John. They will return it, especially when, you don't take it for granted. That's the problem. Too many people out there saying, they get all these freaking quotes and everything, they're used to this kind of stuff. I'm not going to spend the time and go and do that. Wrong. Number one, wrong. It's a huge differentiator, because listen, carrier reps talk to other carrier reps.
Yeah.
If you respect them and they respect you, they'll share your name, because guess what? They may not be in the niche market that you're looking for, and you have 100 lanes, and they're like, hey, listen, I could do it, but it's really not in my service area. It's not my niche. However, you know what? I talked to so-and-so, maybe you want to go out to them. They would give you like a lead and say to, one of their fellow carrier reps from a different company, hey, you know what? I know so-and-so, he's looking for specific lanes. I know that's really good for you guys, because you guys specialize in that things we don't. Why don't you give them a call? I mean, if you don't respect them and you don't say nothing, they're not going to do that for you.
Yeah, it's a word of mouth business. It's been that way forever. And if you get people saying, hey, I can't do this for you, but I know somebody who can, and your name bubbles to the top of that list, then that's just word of mouth business coming right your way with little or no effort or energy to win that business. You just have to, do the same good job you've been doing all along.
Yeah, it's reputation. It's your reputation. It's just like brokers who have friends who are other brokers. They may be great in flatbed, but not so good in van.
Right.
And they know you, and they appreciate you, they respect you, and they know that you can get the job done. Hey, you know what? I run into a lot of van moves. It's not our thing. Hey, listen, I know you're going to put a really good feather in my cap. Why don't you reach out to ABC Company? I'll give them a heads up, because they reached out to me and I'm moving something else that I don't do. I'll recommend it.
Right. Exactly. So Jeff, let me, I've got a very good example of the opposite of what we're talking about here.
Okay.
Happened to me this week. So I'm at the office. We're in the office 3 days a week, and I'm walking through the lobby towards the elevators to go up to the floor I'm working on, and my cell phone rings, and it's an unknown number. I don't recognize the number.
Right.
So I was actually waiting on a call from my IT group because I had an issue. So I figured it might be them. That stuff gets outsourced all the time. So I answer the phone, and this person starts chatting me up like we're old college buddies. Okay.
Get ready for the pitch.
This goes on for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then he introduces himself, and it's a broker. And I'm like, okay. So he starts asking me questions. And I'm sitting there listening to him, and he goes, well, what about your business, Mr. Burr? Is it vendor managed, or do you control? How much of your business do you control?
Right.
And I told him, I said, well, the majority of it's vendor managed. And then he goes, well, how many vendors do you have? And I said, over 200 in the States. And I couldn't figure out why he asked me that question. And, he's sitting there, and the last question he asked me is how can I be better at sales in this industry? And I said, you need to schedule time with somebody if you want to meet with them, and don't do it over their cell phone. And then I hung up on him. So as a shipper, I get tons of these things all the time, DM, email, cell phones. So I've got a few minutes to ascertain whether I want to pursue a relationship with this broker.
Right.
And so I start thinking about the whole conversation. I said, number one, he didn't respect my time because he called me out of the blue. Number two, he didn't respect my privacy because he called my cell phone. Number three, he didn't really know what he was talking about because when he asked the 200 vendor question, that's an irrelevant question. It doesn't mean anything, and it isn't going to get him any other business. And then all of his questions were really centered around what could I do for him? How much freight do you control? Who manages your freight? How can I be better in sales? It was always about him. And I'm like, oh, okay. So needless to say, and I'm not going to mention the broker or the individual, I'm not going to do business with this guy. Just the basic common principles of common decency and respect are not there. What do you think they're going to do with my freight? So, I'm like, I thought about putting a post about this on LinkedIn, and I just said, you know what? No, I'm not going to do it. And
you can talk about it right here on the old Doghouse Logistics.
But it was, you had to, and I made pretty much all those assumptions I just shared with you in less than 5 minutes after the call was over. So it's, the training out there just sucks. And we both know that. But the kind of things that, like what we're talking about today, with the respecting of time and respecting of privacy and showing that common courtesy, all those things that you have already mentioned, those are, number one, those should be just like breathing. And number two, they're not, because hardly anybody does them. So when you do those things, you look like a rock star. And it's not so much that you put a lot of effort into it, because like we said before, those things don't take a lot of time. But because nobody else is doing it, the bar is so low out there that it doesn't take much to wow somebody. And that's what endures people to other people. And like you said, I mean, that can go beyond the primary relationship and expand through, like you said, referrals and word of mouth to multiple relationships.
Absolutely. It's like I said earlier, when I put posts out there, I'm not a know-it-all. I'm not. I'm really not. And you're not one either. We learn every single day. But I'll tell you what, when I put things out, it's not saying, oh, here goes Jeff again. He thinks he's a know-it-all. He's putting it. No, because I know that it works, and I'm trying to help the industry out. I'm trying to share best practices because I've been out there. I've seen a lot of stuff, and I know when I write a lot of stuff, I know I'm not going to get any responses to it because it's going to put people out there, and people don't want to be put out there. If they were good and confident in their abilities based upon the questions that I asked, why wouldn't they come and say something like that? That's why I put 99% will not know to do this. It's not in their vocabulary. Their vocabulary is to sell, to get profits. The service side, they kind of push off to the side. The safety is hardly ever mentioned in any kind of dealings, and I was really surprised at a post that I put out there. And I talked to my very good friend Dale Prax about it. And as you know, I'm gonna, at the Broker Carrier Summit, I'm gonna be monitoring and also a speaker for safety, because it's so missed in this industry.
Right.
And a lot of people don't talk about that and ramifications of the impacts that it has when you don't put or have a safety first mindset. It all deals with this kind of stuff. And that's why I knew when I put that stuff out there, a lot aren't going to say those things. And it's so prevalent. It's so important in this industry. And why people don't do that, I'm baffled, John. I'm so damn baffled.
Yeah, and it's pretty much always been like that.
It has, and I'm not really sure why they don't want to take that extra step. I don't understand it, and I'm a firm believer, and it's a sad fact that it takes a catastrophic event to change somebody's mind.
That's exactly what I was
until that effing time comes up. Oh, it's never going to happen to me. It's a waste of time. I'm not going to do that. I've got to do this, not that. And then all of a sudden it kicks them in the ass and they're like, why didn't I do that? It always happens that way.
Yep.
That's why I have that what if mindset, that proactive what if mindset. It's so important in logistics, and people don't think about those things. They don't, in logistics, the high probability of issues and problems happening are like 110%.
Yep. I was sitting there thinking the same thing. I was like, safety never becomes a priority until something happens. And then it's a priority.
It only becomes that, it's like, why? It's a huge question that needs to be answered, that nobody wants to answer it, because either they don't know or they're going to come across as weak. The ego, they don't want, they don't want to come across of not knowing. I mean, it's a shame. We're not gaining anything, you and I, from doing these podcasts and stuff. We're trying to share like some really good stuff that should be taken into consideration. Yep. As a very important option that should be implemented into your operations, like big time.
Absolutely.
And I don't know. I have to laugh. It's sad, but I have to laugh at it.
It's free knowledge. I mean, who would turn down free knowledge? I mean, I wouldn't.
Hey, you know what? Like Christy Knitchell, she's a good friend of mine. She's smart as hell, right? Bang stuff off her and stuff like that, because there's things that she knows a hell of a lot more than myself. Like in intermodal. I mean, I'm good at intermodal, but I don't dabble in it 100% of the time like she does. Right. So it's like, hey, what's happening, or something like that, or we just throw it out there, or she'll agree with me and I'll agree with her. It doesn't matter who the person is a man or a woman. You're talking about knowledge. You're talking about experience.
Right.
Get it from all angles. The more options and more solutions that you hear from multiple people, you'll have a better perception of what's actually going on in the market, and we'll be talking about that soon, and kind of predicting the future and what needs to be done. But at least it will give you a better foresight on what you should do as an individual, especially if you're on the selling side, logistics side, or whatever, and trying to figure out these problems. You should always have big ears and listen with intent.
Absolutely. Wise counsel is always paramount. And to your point, it could come from You could come from, it's not gender specific. It's not age necessarily age specific. It's not a walk of life specific. It's, to your point, it's straight up knowledge, and everybody, people benefit from that. So yeah, if you want best practices for your company, it's best to speak with others, to listen to others, and see how they did things. When I build processes within my organization, I'll listen to 4 or 5 folks, and all of them had good points, and I will take and mold something out of those good points to get kind of the best of the best. Because the more information I have, the more knowledge I have, the more best practices I have in the process, the better the process is going to be. And I'm a firm believer in building processes that are built to last. I do not have the time to constantly go back and babysit a process once I built it, implemented it, and got it off the ground. I just don't have the time. So when I put something down, number one, I want it to be my best, because I want to do a good job for my employer. But number two, I want it to be solid. I want it to be like Ford, built to last. I want that process to be working long after I'm gone.
Right.
So
but I can tell you this, that in its original format, that best practice, that work instruction will change over time.
Oh, it will.
And we talk about continuous improvement, right, in an operation. So you write a work instruction, you're in a headquarters someplace, you've got distributors, vendors, whatever that you're overlooking, and trucks to be loaded and everything. Now you've got your people who are in the trenches day in and day out, who are going to know it better than you because you're not in that. So once those work instructions are put together and you implement them, it's up to your people in the trenches, on the floor, to do what is best. Now you're going to get that feedback, and hopefully, as a good leader you are, you're going to take that into consideration, and then you'll make addendums to the original work instruction process to show your hierarchies the continuous improvement over time, because what's written today may not be lasting tomorrow, because somebody may have looked at it and said, no, I tried this and it sped up things. It made it more efficient. We're more productive because of this one little tweak in it.
Right.
Great. Let's add it in. Show me how it works, kind of deal.
Absolutely.
So it's always the evolution of process.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between continuous improvement and babysitting. So
absolutely.
One is proactive and one is reactive. And the less reactive you are in this industry, the better off you're going to be.
Right. And it tells you how in tune your people in the trenches are to what is being told of them to do. And I wouldn't say, no, it's my way or the highway. Right. What do you have in mind? What are you seeing? Tell me, let's chat. And then you bring them into the picture and around the round table, and they see that they're getting involved into the process. It makes them feel, hey, you know what? I'm important. Right. They respect my opinion on it. That's awesome. And it sends a great message across the bow.
I mean, it so does. It's, you're developing an environment where the people in the trenches know that A, they can come approach you at any time, and B, that you're going to listen. And if it makes sense to implement, then you're going to implement it. And like you said, it solidifies their stakeholder position within the operation. I mean, because they're going to, you get some people out there, you hear this, I heard this quiet quitting thing, which is funny, I guess. But people are just doing the bare minimum, punch in, do the bare minimum to keep from getting fired, and punch out. And that takes that type of environment off the table and puts, hey, I can contribute to the success of this organization. Hey, I have a place in this organization. And if I don't do my job to the best of my ability and give good feedback, then everybody's going to suffer, including me. So you're creating that environment and that kind of open door policy, for lack of a better term.
Oh yeah.
But that's exactly the environment you need. I mean, you got to have that.
Oh, I agree. And you know what? And this could be another topic at a different time, but I'll just touch on it real quick. Quiet quitting is the result of poor leadership.
Absolutely.
Plain and simple. And one of the reasons is that there's absent leadership on the floor.
That's right.
And what is not seen is accepted. And if you're a true leader, you don't sit in a freaking office. And to your point, and I've always used this, and I love when you said it. I had an open door policy, especially when I was working at Ford and highly complex. I was always being pulled in all directions, doing analysis, looking all different modes, looking at the operations and everything. So I was busy. I was out on the floor. I was in my office, but I never closed my door. It was always open. No pun intended, open door policy. And when one of my employees walked in that door, no matter what I was doing and how important it was, my employee was more important than what I was doing. I would drop everything on a dime and listen with intent, because there was a reason why he or she, breached my door and wanted to talk to me. And I wanted to hear that because it was important. To your point, you're only as good as the people that you have in place in that specific position, but not that you have to be a micromanager and be up their ass constantly all the time, but you need to have that pulse. You need to listen and have that finger on the pulse day in and day out. That's what makes the logistics move at a high rate, more efficient, removing waste, more productive. As I would say, removing waste to work smarter, not harder, to do more in less time. That's the thing, because especially when you're in a complex thing, you have to remove that waste.
Yep.
Because there's so many important things that you have to multitask and be on top of every single minute of the day, and we're not talking 9 to 5. It doesn't exist in logistics.
What's that?
We're not bankers, so I'm sorry. We're bankers in one way, where we try to find hidden bank opportunities to save money, but we're not bankers.
So we don't keep bankers hours.
No, it's like my wife at night. I have my phone on. She goes, "Why don't you shut it off? Come on, man. We got to go to bed and anything." Honey, how many years I've been in logistics? Why do I leave my phone on? Okay. Can you put it on like vibrate or something loud, like instead of ringing and stuff like that? Not that it happens all the time right now, but it used to. But it rolls 24/7, 365.
Absolutely.
It's made for special people like you and I.
Yeah. So Jeff, I mentioned a minute ago about being proactive and being reactive, and being reactive. If you're in a constant state of reactivity in this industry, you're in trouble. So one of the things that I do and have done and continue to do is I mentioned it was forecasting the future. Yeah. Now, before we get started on this topic, I'm going to put a caveat out there, because I know some people listening, we have no clue what the market's going to be in 6 months. Okay.
Correct.
We cannot give you if rates are going to drop or if they're going to go up. The only thing we can do is use barometers in the industry to see which way the wind is blowing and to be able to mitigate issues before they become issues. There's headwinds out there. There's geopolitical unrest like there's nobody's business lately. So I'm just going to give a few things that I do that'll help, and maybe somebody listening on the show can implement these into their day to day. I liken it to the old wooden sailing vessels. The captain is the CEO, right?
Yeah.
He's the one driving the boat. And as a logistics manager, I'm the guy up in the crow's nest with the binoculars. So it's my job to report the icebergs or potential icebergs that could take the boat out. And that's my job. And once I do that, I have fulfilled my obligation to my organization in that regard. And it's up to the CEO to decide whether he wants to turn the boat or go full steam ahead. So let me kind of share some of these things. There are tons of publications out there. One of the ones that I use is the Morgan Stanley Freight Index. Morgan Stanley does an awesome job. The information is completely free. All you have to do is fill out a survey, a quick 5-minute survey, and then they send you the links, and they send you 2 links. One is the freight index itself, along with anything and everything, and then one of it is what they call the freight sentiment index, and that's where the people who are signed up on this program share their insight and their wisdom in what they think is going to happen, here right now, and then 3 months from now or down the road. So you take everything is kind of almost like with a grain of salt. There's no straight cut answer, but the freight index, what the freight index does, and I wish I had time to print out, get a copy of it so I can share it on this thing. But if somebody wants to see it, I'm happy to share it. It's a ratio of the number of trucks out there versus the number of loads. So basically, if you have, I look at it like, okay, if the freight index is sitting at 5, okay, that means there's 5 loads for every truck, roughly. Again, this is a barometer. This is not a thermometer. It's a barometer. So the higher that load count gets to the truck, the tighter capacity is getting. And it also shows trends. They've done many years of this, so they got all the trend data right there on the graph. All it's telling you is capacity tightening or is capacity loosening. And again, you kind of have to take it it's almost kind of nebulous, The other thing in that survey that I look at, outside the commentary from my colleagues who post in there about what they think the market's doing or whatever.
Right.
And let me back up a second. This is brokers, carriers, and shippers. So everybody's kind of contributing. So it's not just all shippers or all brokers or all carriers.
Right.
The other index that I look at, and this is more of an economic barometer, the country's economy.
Mm-hmm.
Is it good? Is it bad? Is it stagnant? So I look at, they do freight indexes for dry van, they do freight indexes for reefer, and they do freight indexes for flatbeds.
Yep.
So if you think about it, housing starts are a really good barometer of how the economy is doing or going to be doing soon. If they're up, then you're in good shape. If they're down, then you're not. And most of those materials that deliver to the job site on those houses are delivered on what? Flatbeds.
But there's an offset to that, John.
What is that?
Hurricanes and tornadoes. They can upset.
I'm getting to that.
All right, I'm with you.
Good, man. Give me a second. So I look at the flatbed index, even though I don't ship any freight. The FDA would probably crucify me if I put food on a flatbed. Right. So I still look at it, and if the capacity is tightening on that graph, then that means housing starts are going up. If it's not, if it's 1 load to every 5 trucks, then the housing market's not that good. So it gives you a little bit of a view into the economy.
Yep.
And that's the Morgan Stanley has been my Bible. I have carriers and brokers who give me their, they do trend data too. I look at that. I look at anything anybody puts in front of me. Okay.
Yep.
Another good source out there is FreightWaves. I mean, you can find all kinds of stuff on FreightWaves, and they've got some really super smart people working there. I think they call them data scientists, and they're a lot smarter than me, but they present all this data, and it helps. Load tender rejection. That's another thing.
Yep.
So you can kind of dial in a little bit. It's still kind of, like I said, nebulous. But now we'll move on to your point. So I look at the weather.
Yes.
I don't just look at the weather in Nashville. I look at the weather across my entire supply chain.
Mhm.
I've got restaurants coast to coast,
Yep.
and any act of God, hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires, snow, anything like that is going to cause problems, and it's going to cause it in two unique ways. Number one, if you have a tornado sitting down in Florida, where I have some restaurants, and it's a nasty one, it's Cat 3, Cat 4, whatever. Drivers are not going to want to go down there if you have freight going that way, and I don't blame them.
No.
I would not drive into a hurricane if you paid me. So you're going to have some tender rejections, which is going to impact your service level. It's going to impact your capacity going in that specific geographical area. So I'm watching these, especially during hurricane season, because we got them all up and down the eastern seaboard.
More than ever.
And I'm watching them. We had some get hit in Houston not too long ago.
Yeah.
Luckily, we didn't get a whole lot of damage, but I'm looking at that, and then to your point, and I knew kind of where you were going with this. If you have a natural disaster out there, FEMA's going to come in and they're going to suck capacity out of the market. They're gonna have trailers for storage. They're going to have drivers driving truckloads of water to the affected area. This could impact you too, because the federal government can pay more per mile than you ever thought. You can't compete with them. And I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but some of these asset-based carriers have agreements with the federal government that should something happen, then they're going to be called into service. And honestly, me personally, I think you should take care of the people in the middle of a natural disaster before you take care of me. If you want to prioritize something. The other thing, and I mentioned it a minute ago, is geopolitical unrest. Everybody knows about Ukraine and Russia and Israel and Gaza. Israel and crap, just went blank. What's the other one? Israel's fighting.
Oh my God.
War in Israel. It's the Gaza Strip.
Gaza, yeah.
That could impact a few things as well. Mainly, it'll have a tendency to impact fuel prices.
Yeah.
Which would be an increase to your cost. So if you're sitting there and you see something going on and it's starting to, you start looking at the fuel prices, you need to go to your finance team and say, hey, we've got a headwind here with this situation. And, you need to be prepared for it, because your freight costs are fixing to go up, and it's not really a whole lot we can do about it because we don't control the cost of fuel. I mean, if you can sit there at the rail strike up in Canada. I mean, what's that doing to capacity? I mean, you gotta keep your eyes and ears open. I'm sitting there constantly looking for these types of things and looking at these reports, because, like I said, I'm in the crow's nest. And if something starts to go south, if we start heading towards the face of the mountain, I need to go tell my leader and the leadership team, here's what's fixing to happen, or here's what could happen. We're keeping an eye on it, and here's the proactive measures we're taking to try to mitigate it. And honestly, Jeff, this whole segment on relationships we just did, I thought that was an awesome idea. Those relationships are going to be key to this.
Absolutely.
Those relationships are key because, if you're in the middle of one of these things, one of these situations, you're going to need a strong relationship with your carrier and broker partners so that you can get that capacity, when you need it. And also they share information because they're out watching this stuff too. Some of them are out there looking to say, hey, did you see this on the news, or did you see this over here? Or, hey, we got 5 hurricanes coming up from Panama. Are you aware of that? You share that information so that you're kind of watching each other's 6.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to protect them. They're trying to protect you. You're probably not going to give them a lot of grief on their service if the drivers don't want to go down to Florida if there's a Cat 3 or Cat 4 sitting down there. I'm going to show a little grace there. Now, if it's dry and sunny and everybody's out drinking pina coladas, then I'm probably not going to be as flexible. But you have to take it's give and take. That. I mean, this whole industry is give and take, and that's part of a strong relationship is give and take. Paying it forward and then calling in a marker, whenever you need it every once in a while.
Sure. 2 things come to mind. When you talk about that and the volatility in the market, you've got a forecast and you have a budget. So what I used to do is I always used to buffer about 10%, depending upon what part of the year that we're in, you know, what the forecasted amount is, and then what the budget is. So sometimes we try to come under budget with the 10% that was built in there. That means we're right where we need to be, you know, or we're going to hit the forecast based on past trends, you know, ordering trends by customer, by location, region, etc. You can pretty much, you know, we called it FMD, forecast monthly demands, you know, and then we could break that down into quarters throughout the whole year. And of course, you know, with the peak season and then with the off season being the first part of the year, the first 3 months being return season, and how that would affect, you know, how much we're sent out, what's the percentage of returns we're expecting, what's the cost associated with it, who do we have in place, etc. The other thing too that's extremely detrimental, John, is when we're talking about the relationships relative to what we're talking about now. The key to overall success is when you have a very good relationship and you keep your carriers fed all year round, doing good and bad. Because the last thing you want to hear, based on your case and what you just stated, the one thing you don't want to hear about from a carrier is, well, what have you done for me lately?
Right.
You want them to respond to a need, a great need, such as a catastrophic event. You know, if they're not already contracted with FEMA, government, some government department or whatever, because there's many, you know, that you could be associated with. Or if you're related or non-contractual with government, they'll affect what you ship based on your responses. How are you interacting with that carrier? Are you saying thank yous? Are you sending out those thank you notes in appreciation for what they're doing when they're quoting you, etc.? Or are you ignoring the fact that they exist and then, you know, canning their ass? And then when things get hot and heavy, going back to them and saying, you know, I didn't really want to do that to you, but I was forced to. And they're like, oh, sure, you know, you wouldn't help us in great need, but now you're in great need and you want me to kiss your ass and move the freight for you. Ain't gonna happen. It just will not happen. So that's working harder, not smarter, because you're not doing the right things that you should be doing, you know, to prevent that. And what are they looking at the what if scenarios and having a proactive mindset rather than a reactive mindset to a problem that you could avoid it if you took the right steps, you know, and implement them to make them go away.
That's exactly right.
And people don't do that because they don't think of them. And that's why I push it. I push it all the time. I don't care what people have to say about it because I know that it works, and it's extremely important in this industry always to look at the what if scenarios, because it's going to happen. It's not that it's never going to happen. It's going to happen, but you don't know when. And what are you going to do when it happens? Right? What are you going to do? Every day in the industry, you get blindsided. You think everything's going well, and then shit hits the fan, and you're getting splattered. You're getting splattered, and you're like, now you're just grasping for solutions. You don't have anything written, you know, because you didn't look at that. You didn't go through the steps of actually doing a case study and saying, if this happens, how would we react to it? How would we get there? How would we be first on the line instead of last? You know, it's like when you go after a big customer, and one of my good friends, Nate Johnson, said, well, what happens if you go after one of these big customers, Jeff? You're a small company, and they say, we want to give you 100 loads a week. You know, are you going to be able to scale? Yes, Nate. I've already got the options and the solutions in place in order to do that. Why? Because I built those relationships and I told them this is what I'm doing, and that's why I built those relationships in those specific areas. So I know that when it does happen, I have multiple choices to go to make it happen. I'm not in a rush to move anybody's freight. I want to know the plan. I want to know their business. I want to understand their seasonality. I want to know everything about that specific customer that most don't want to know about, because that's my differentiator. That's what's going to put me in position A to take care of them. The ones that ignore the fact and don't understand these problems that exist are going to be left behind quickly,
That's right.
and that's why I push it. Anybody want to argue with me? Fine. I'm open for conversation, but I'm passionate about this. I know it works. I've been in there. I've been in the trenches, and I know the shit that can hit the fan at any given moment. The problem is that you can't say it's never going to happen to me, because I hate to tell you this, it will.
It will. It will definitely happen to you, and you're exactly right. Having that visibility by constantly checking the barometers out there in the industry, and then B, building those relationships to have a solid foundation so you don't get caught flat-footed, and then C, putting things in place based on your acquired knowledge of the project, and seeing downstream what could happen, those what if moments you mention all the time. I know you and I are both quite passionate on those, and just putting those plans in place. And you may never have to pull the trigger on, but so you start thinking, basically, this is the best job in the world for a pessimist, because you're always thinking something bad is going to happen, and in this industry, something bad usually does happen. To your point, you just don't know when. So if you start planning your process, or you start planning, your path to the project, and you have that what could go wrong mindset. How can I break this mindset? And then you come back with solutions that will restore it, strengthen it, band it together. And if you do have to implement those things, they're right there at your fingertips. Hopefully you don't have to, but if you do, then you've got it right there at your fingertips. You're not sitting here, you're not being reactive, you're not being overly emotional, because your world's a shit show right now.
Remove the emotional part.
You get that calm, cool, collected, let's execute ABC if XYZ happens. Right. And people are going to be looking to you, because when the fit hits the shan, they're going to be looking to you to fix it, and wanting to know, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And if you sit there and go, you just lost credit.
You're done.
A ton of credibility right there.
Yeah, you'll just be sitting in the corner smoldering. And there's no fire extinguishers in sight.
I can sit there and say, because I have those backup plans either in my mind or written down, or both. And a lot of that comes from the experience, like you, and the more experience you have in here, the more what if situations you know how to fix, because things happen in cycles, if you will, and you're going to run across the same problem a couple of times. There may be a little tweak on it, but the concepts are the same. And how you solved it the first time, if that really, really worked, you may need to tweak it a little bit, but then you implement it, and you're down the highway. And that's what this business is all about. I mean, you're constantly, and I think you mentioned it earlier, you're constantly in a state of triage. Most of the logistics groups that I've been a part of in organizations were very small teams. 3 people, 4 people, including the manager. So you got to get a lot of work done with a lot of limited resources. And if you're constantly being reactive, it's gonna burn you out, and you will not survive this industry.
You will be eaten up and spit out faster than.
Absolutely. That's when you need to go get that banking job.
Right. You know what? That also goes for operational efficiency and productivity, and that's why I'm a huge advocate of cross training. And if you're a good leader and you're in a brokerage operation or a shipping operation, how do you respond when a person gets into an accident, gets hit by a bus, out sick or whatever, and that job needs to be taken care of? Do you have anybody in your organization, in any department, that's cross-trained, that could fit and fill a position for, a minimum time or whatever to
Right.
either find a replacement or hire one and train them properly, or be able to cover that individual while that person is out. You
That's
know,
right.
people don't think about those things. You know, it's highly critical for any logistics operations, brokerage operations to have that in place, because the customers still need to be addressed and serviced correctly,
Right.
and those person needs to be up, up to date on the nuances that's happening with those customers. And how does that happen? You can't just transfer that and say take over, because you really don't know the ins and out. That's why I'm a huge advocate. Anybody that's in a role, write your own JD description to see if you really know what the job is, and then write a work instruction on how you do your job, and then give it to somebody else and say, do my job. And then
Right.
you're going to find out quickly whether or not you have a really good training program and you trained your associates well, or you may have thought that you trained your associates well, but they really don't know their job, and they surely don't understand or how to write a work instructions, including keystrokes, F strokes, everything. I'm talking detail oriented, so that a
Right.
person can jump into there and just go to town and pick up where you left off. You
Yeah.
know, nobody really does that. It's a shame.
I do two things. I cross train my team because it's it's not your customer's fault that there's not a butt in that seat.
They don't want to
And
hear it.
honestly, your customer should never even know that's a problem.
Correct.
And then the other thing that I do, I'm not I'm not averse to rolling my sleeves up and getting in the trenches too. So with a three-man team that I have now, I can step in and I can do things as well. And it's not beneath me to do that, because ultimately our goal is to take care of our internal and external customers. And if somebody's out, that's not their fault, and
Right.
neither should they be impacted by it. So I will, with my team, I will sit down with them, and if there's something, we have a big project or we have something a big shit show, then I'm gonna be right there with them. I'm going to be helping them and trying not to be a detriment to them, because obviously they know more about their job than I do. But there's things that I can do. I've learned over time. We built this thing from the ground up, so I had a part in that. So I know how it's kind of set up, and then that way that person can take PTO and not be worried that if they come back to the office that their desk is a mess, because
Right.
nobody wants to do that. So, and my teammates are the same with me. Yeah, do they do all the director level stuff? No,
No.
because
Right.
that's not how it's structured. But if I know that if I take a day off, like today, which I did, I know that my team can handle the daily operations, number one, and number two, if something comes up and they don't know what to do, they have that open door policy, like we mentioned a minute ago. Even if I'm on vacation,
Yep.
they can pick up the cell phone and they can text me or call me. They can email me, and I tell them that when I go on PTO, I said, hey, I'm on PTO. I'm not really going anywhere, so I'm not going to be tied up. If something goes south on you, give me a call.
Yep.
And I can tell you, rarely does that phone ever ring, because they know how to handle the day-to-day ops. And just like when they're out on PTO or sick or whatever, they know they're going to be covered. So they cover me as well. We cover each other. We watch each other's six. And, we jump in and help when we pivot a lot. We're very flexible in and out, based on the situation, because some days may be hell on earth and some days may be relatively quiet.
Yeah.
So, relatively quiet, we're all kind of doing our own thing, maybe catching up on some admin stuff. But when all hell breaks loose, we're all on deck, and it's not I need you to be on deck. It's you better be on deck, and you better have that sense of urgency in your wheelhouse. I shouldn't have to tell you we're in a shit show.
Yeah.
You should know, and you should know your role in that shit show, and you should know what you need to do. And having that, any of us will do anything to help the others mentality goes a long way.
And that's what good leaders do. And as a good example, and I'm really happy that I had the best mentors and coaches out there. back in the day, we're going back 30 years ago, 35 years ago.
I think
we
I was
worked
5 back then.
we worked a little different, John, where we had to get dressed up to go to work. Even if you were in a warehouse and you were in your office, you had to dress up business, not like business casual. Sometimes you wore a tie, depending upon who's coming in and visiting the operation, etc. But every end of the month, I would have a pair of jeans, and I would bring in the t-shirt, and I'd have sneakers, and I would jump in and load trucks with my team, because that's how I was trained as a leader. A good leader has his hand on the pulse, understands, and then actually works it, with their people, warehouse operators, forklift drivers. I used to drive a forklift. I used to stock shelves. I did all that kind of stuff, kitting, you name it. And then jumping in a trailer in the middle of the summer, where the roof of the trailer is about 125, 130, and you go in there, weighing like 200 and come out at 180. I mean, kind of deal, and hand stacking, not palletized, not rolling in there,
Head loaded. Yep.
yeah, receivers, tuners and receivers. When I was doing electronics, 2,800 of them to almost 3,000 hand loaded into a 53 footer, So when people say, hey, I'm not going to do this, not my job. Oh yeah, it wasn't my job either, yet I did it, and I wouldn't ask you to do anything. Right. And I wouldn't ask you to do anything that I haven't already done.
Exactly.
So don't tempt me, because I don't want to outwork you, seriously, and they were like, okay, like that. We're loading trucks until 3:00 in the morning to meet in the month budgets, sales. You had to meet those sales requirements. It doesn't matter what, I bought pizza and all that kind of stuff, took care of my guys, whatever. But I mean, that's another different story. But the thing is that good leaders as yourself are getting in the trenches and doing what it takes to show others that it can be done. And here's the right way of doing it. And there's no such thing as a stupid question. That's what I'm here for. Yep. I'm not here to be that guy that it's my way or the highway. I don't work that way. I listen to my people and I implement what they say, because they represent me.
Right.
And you're only as good as the people that you have there. And you're only as good as the people that you train. They mess up because of you.
Yep.
It's your fault. It's your fault that shit's hitting the fan and that they're not being as productive as they should be, or they're not as efficient as they should be, because you have a poor training program. You didn't train them properly, and you didn't put your finger on the pulse. And that's why you're not making the profits and the margins and the revenue, or saving that kind of money that you should be, because of you. It's your fault, and if it is your fault, you have to learn to say and accept it and eat crap and saying, I did it. It was my fault. I'm the accountable one. That's what's missing in the industry too. Not too many people are accountable for their actions, and needs to change. When you can say no, instead of being a yes person, when you can accept that you're wrong, or be accountable for your wrongdoings, it's only going to make you a better leader. You're going to get better at this job in logistics. I don't care what anybody else says out there. Prove me wrong. I know some good leaders out there. I know some career advisors. Brent Osuda says it all the freaking time. Charlie Saffel say it all the time. You have to be in it to freaking win it. You have to be the one that shows people how to do it, but not do it for them, but make them understand how important their job is, not just for you, but the company in which they represent. And people just don't get it. And that's why Brett always pounds that in there. You see his podcast all the time. Charlie's always out there speaking, talking about how important these freaking things are when you're looking for a job and you want the right role for the right person who has the right experience, to get the job done, because that's what they're paying you to do, exactly. To win, to make money. You know, that's why we're all in the business and why we do the silly things that we do day in and day out. So with that said, we're over time. I appreciate you, coming on today, John, as always. And I hope you have a great weekend, a great Labor Day weekend. You know, take some time off. Don't work too hard, right?
You the same. Peace, brother.
We'll see ya.